The presenter is currently working on the audio problem. Please stand by.
Unmute yourself on Zoom. There it is. Oh, I can. I can't hear it.
No?
Let me try it. I'll just screen share it from my end. If I can just go from here and then. Okay, stop screen sharing. I'll try it.
Okay. All right. Try it. Hi. Welcome back to part 2 of my FRC Java programming seminar. I'm Miles. I'm an alumni of Team 3035 Droid Rage from Corpus Christi, Texas. Last part, we went over the basics, stuff that maybe I wish I knew when I started programming, some very useful resources, some skills that you might need to develop in order to become the best programmer you can be, as well as a guide through a basic iterative program or class. This time, we're going to look at what lies beyond the code, because programmers are surprisingly only one position on your robotics team. So while the subject of this hour is dedicated to veteran programmers, I don't think it has to necessarily be about some dark arts of programming that only the upper echelons are privy to. If that were the case, I wouldn't be able to speak for it. When it comes to advanced programming, there are better sources out there. As you improve as a programmer and as an investigator of the many technical skills that FIRST has to offer, you'll be able to tackle stuff like odometry, computer vision, even a whole new way of controlling your robot. But I can't speak for much of that myself. What I do think I can speak for, however, is the metagame of being a programmer. I'll get into what that means in a bit. Sure, on the surface level, you're simply programming lines for your robot to follow. But if you take a step back and look at the bigger picture, how you program influences a lot more than just your robot's operations. That's what I hope to cover during the seminar. I can't guarantee that I'll be able to satisfactorily fill up the entire hour, but after 4 years in FIRST, in a team like mine, as student-led as it was, and as a UIL state champ, I feel like I've got a lot to say. So I feel like the best way to talk about what high-level programming is, it would be best to look at what low-level programming is. And I'm happy to say I've been on, well, I want to say I've been on both, but I can only guarantee that I've been on one, back in my sophomore year. Let's wind the clock back to the beginning of the year, 2018, Relic Recovery. The FRC season hasn't started yet. We're just trying to make sure that we can get to regionals with our FTC team. I was a sophomore with experience as both a programmer and a drive coach in my FTC team, 12285, rest in peace. Despite our engineering notebook, crafty programming tricks, and a valiant display against the heaviest hitters in our local league during the qualifications, we weren't picked by either of the top two teams. Why is that? Well, our robot played the game decently enough, as was our strategy. It was okay. During the competition, however, the number one ranked team, coincidentally another Droid Rage team within our school, 10862, actually told me some stuff about why, why, and that's what I love about 10862 and the engineer that I'm talking about that told this to me, because he's always, he tells you how it is, he tells it like it is. That's one of my favorite things about him. What he told me really blew open the doors to how I see programming in FIRST, and really as competing in FIRST as well. The game at the time was called Relic Recovery, and in the game, all robots start off at each of the four corners of the arena. Here's actually an image of what that looks like. So, an autonomous here would typically involve detecting and removing this colored ball, and then trying to score a cube or 5. However, as you can see, the sides of the field weren't symmetrical on the same side. They were on both sides, but as you can see, if you're on one particular corner of the field, you have access to different things than on the other side. You would probably want to, in order to maximize your cubes scored within the 30 seconds, you might prefer to start on the bottom corner in relation to the blue team, where the cubes in the goal area are directly across from one another. In fact, you'll see this if you look at like the World Championships of that game. There's like this one robot that's like intaking and then zoop and then outtaking, like put him in there, and he's like goes back into the thing, boom, 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 non-stop, back to back. We had this idea too, but that's where the kicker is. I spent so much time working on the autonomous for this specific corner that I relegated much of the other side's autonomous to simple like knocking off the jewel and parking. By the time Alliance selection happened, the number 1 team, which had a remarkable bottom corner auto, chose the number 2 team in our league, which had the best top corner auto among us. That's the crux of what I'm getting across. While we were focusing so hard on trying to compete with the big boys at this high level stuff, we didn't consider that maybe we would have found more success by realizing that the teams most likely to bring us to regionals probably don't need a second team struggling to fulfill the niche that they're already fulfilling. That was when I learned about a whole new shade of cooperation. I'm a huge fan of games like Super Smash Bros. And Mortal Kombat. I'm very interested in seeing how people play games against each other to become the best, like what tactics they employ. In each and every game where this is the case, there's more to winning than simply playing the game better than your opponent. There's a second skill involved that goes beyond the actual screen that you two are playing on. It's called the metagame, or a game outside the game. You might know through prior research that your opponent is this annoying floaty Jigglypuff. You acknowledge that you'll have a much harder time beating her with your main, so you instead pick the range character that you could practice in. You've already lost the previous match, but that means you get to pick the next stage. So you choose Battlefield, since the higher ceiling means that Jigglypuff's rest won't take you out quite as soon, as long as you aren't on the platforms. That's the metagame. In the context of FRC, the metagame comes into play in a ton of different ways, all the time, even as a programmer. By my junior year, I was a lot more well-versed in how the larger game works. I could notice patterns between different games throughout the years, and I also had a better grasp in terms of my limits, when it comes to time. If you're a small team like we were, Droid Rage, and we still are, come to think of it, you simply will not be able to have a robot that can do absolutely everything and go toe-to-toe with Robonauts or Black Hawk Robotics. But the beauty of FIRST is that you don't have to be. I'm going to replay Finals 2 from the Texas District Champs. Notice what each robot on the Red Alliance, that's us, is doing.
I'm going to try my best to annotate this.
Red, we were a little weak the first time. Hope we can get a little bit louder the second.
We're
The Blue
Red
Alliance
Alliance.
looking to get that bread to stay alive. The Red Alliance needs a win to take it all. Barbecue Poison ready, looking to put another one up on the Barbie. Meanwhile,
that
140
made us, and we decided, okay, we'll go out later after they're done. That way we could do what we had to do, get the score in, get the higher, immediate score, and not get in anyone else's way. And like as soon as everything started, these guys were working on the rocket, and we were working on the cargo, like immediately. And that was like our entire focus throughout much of the match. There is some defense going on, and I think our robot was capable of doing some defense too. But at that point, it was 2 robots doing their best to do like the rockets and whatever, versus like 3 robots doing everything. And look at that, versus like looking at the cargoes going on. Yeah, we definitely took. It was very like we worked together really well. I wasn't actually here during this competition, but I'll mention that later. But still, that's basically the idea that I'm trying to get across here. I'll skip ahead.
It ricochets off the robot. The winner for Texas District Champs, 1917, the Llano Estacado Robo Raiders, and 2714 Barbecue.
Hey, I'm back. Welcome back. We were that stubby robot in the middle with the awkward looking arm, really short looking, amidst all these other like really tall, really mean looking robots. You might be wondering how our small team got picked by two of the projected dominators of the entire state. Well, it's simple. Think about the field that you saw during that match. You don't need to know much about Operation Deep Space, a 2019 game, to see a valuable niche that's available here. Notice how each alliance only gets 2 rockets to score in. It would be pretty weird for you as an alliance captain to take 2 other rocket-capable robots on your team, especially since the mechanisms used for rockets means that for the vast majority of teams, you'll have a slower mechanism than simply picking up balls and shooting them in the middle cargo bay. And you need the middle cargo bay to be filled up in order to win. As you can tell, you only need 1 rocket bot per robot to boot. That's what I like about FIRST. They really try to make sure that everyone of any kind of level can fulfill a niche in their competitions. So why waste time and effort trying to be like a Dollar Tree brand rocket bot when you can instead work within your means and optimize cargo scoring? Sure, a rocket incapable bot wouldn't mean guaranteed wins and qualifications, but the best teams aren't just looking at the numbers, they aren't looking at just the wins. There's always going to be that second team with a great rocket mechanism that they can work with. They don't have to worry about that. What they're looking for is someone that has a bot and game plan that synergizes with them, just like an FDC, just like with their autonomous. Maybe they're looking for someone that, instead of is able to do everything, they're able to make sure that they can do the cargo as perfectly as possible, as fast as possible, and can also climb onto the second level. I mean, they don't need them to climb on the 3rd level, they're already doing that, right? That's it. That's the niche. That's the niche that our engineers locked on to early on in the season, and that's the game plan that they told me and the other programmers to work around. And we're back. That's right, this is a programming seminar conference, dude. Wake up. What is a programmer's relationship with all this? Well, a high-level team has all hands on deck when it comes to planning around a game plan. And programmers are no different. Collect and score those foam balls into the cargo bay. Or were they rubber? I don't remember. Anyway, that was the goal. What's the fastest possible way to do this? Probably an intake shooter design that collects and shoots the ball in one fluid motion. Just like how in Relic Recovery you would collect the cube, it would go through the robot and then come back out the other side really fast. Unfortunately, that's also really hard, and our wiring was a mess as it was, so we decided to go with a flipping arm that would just collect the ball, lift itself up, you would drive over to it, and then you would lower the arm, go back into the pile, and then you would start the process over again. And we felt that would be reasonably fast. So this would involve 1 or 2 motors for the high torque required to reliably lift the arm non-stop. Probably just 1 high RPM motor for the intake, and some groovy controls for the drivers to really get into the flow of the match. Now, I wasn't there for this particular competition, but I was for a previous district event. As a benefit of being a programmer and a drive coach, is that you're able to see every time your opponent or your teammate struggles with their control, or if they're not using the tools you've given them as much as you feel they need to. Multiple times over the course of the season, we tested out different frame rates and image sizes for the camera, especially since that far cargo slot on the opposite side of your bright yellow team is nigh impossible to score without a second pair of eyes. As the frame rate and image size go up, the quality of the video goes down, which means that we need to find a perfect balance for our drivers. It may not seem like much, but quality of life improvements for the control go a long way in the matches that follow. For example, my driver really preferred arcade drive over tank drive. That same teammate also preferred tank drive over arcade drive for different reasons. He really wanted the ability to have the option to go in between them for different purposes throughout different points of the match, whether they felt like it. So, I implemented a way for him to toggle between both driving styles at will. Learning how to set up a toggle is really fun at first, and I originally used it to make like a turbo mode for my FTC robot. Usually we had to go in at like 0.85% of its full power, because that was just what my driver was, familiar with, comfortable with. So I implemented this fun little button that you can push, and then the robot now goes at full speed, full tilt, in case he ever needed it. He never needed it, but I thought it was really cool. And I was able to use that information in order to do that really vital thing for my driver. I really recommend you learn how to do something like that. It involves booleans and checks and some conditionals throughout the teleop. I'm not sure if I did it the most optimal way, but I feel really happy with how it came out. There is few to no official guides on doing it. You have to piece it together either through other people's work on Chief Delphi, or maybe looking through some people's code to see if they are doing anything similar in their public GitHubs, which I definitely recommend looking at too. Really cool. Another thing I did was, at the request of my driver during the 2018 game Power Up for FRC, I added this funky control to the intake that would slowly turn only one of the intake wheels. You might be wondering, why? Don't you just want the intakes to be like, and then the outtakes to go like, well, we did this because the simple intake drive into cube strategy was rife with complications thanks to our design. Our design was literally like two rigid arms with a wheel on each end. So like, even as we iterated it to make it a lot better when it comes to picking it up, we would still get to these problems where the robot or the box would be lopsided or misaligned, which means we couldn't score it properly. We fixed this by having this slight little turning wheel that would rotate the cube, and then boom, it would fix itself. And then we can get right back into the game with a minimal, hit to our, to your in and out, to your scoring and then collecting and then scoring, your cycle time. That's another example of using programming to allow you to perform your niche more efficiently. By the end, our robot only did like 3 things really. We scored cargo in low goals. We would place those discs, and we climbed to the lower pedestal at the end of the game, which is another example of filling a niche. Why work harder on the pneumatics or the linear slides that might break or do any of these horrible things when the team you want to pick, you, already has a level 3 climb in themselves? Like, they don't need a second one. You might as well just focus on doing the level 2 climb, which is a lot easier. This game doesn't care about your level of income or your decades of mentorship and establishment. You can be a drivetrain with a laundry basket on it, and you can be one of the most reliable scorers in the district if you make sure to work towards your niche. If you make sure to follow your game plan, if your game plan is, effective, efficient. That's a true story, by the way. Stick to what you're good at, right? Here's another match that we played. This was way earlier in the season, and the camera quality or the camera angle isn't quite as amazing as the other one. But this also demonstrates how valuable being good at what you're good at means. Because during this competition, during the finals, we went up against a whole bunch of teams that were doing something vaguely similar to us. Because that early in the season, rocket capable robots weren't that popular. And you're able to see, okay, you'll be able to also notice by the end of the match, you'll see like how much cargo everyone scored, and you'll see like, oh, they very much focus on the cargo, both of them. And being able to be the one that does that, like the fastest and the best, that's what really, sets you apart. That's what really makes you valuable, I think. As long as you can fill your niche, right? Anyway, here's the video.
This is a shame because like the crowd was going like crazy. You see those people? You see those people like going crazy up there? Wait, was that us? I think that's us. Leo might know better. But
Yes, I do believe that was us up there.
it's a shame that they muted it because like once at the very end, everyone went crazy. Like it blew the roof off. We are Red Alliance. We're behind that rocket, like we're in the back. Okay, we start off pretty even, and Mike was in the middle there. And I remember that particular one. Earlier on in that competition, we made this mistake where like he accidentally went a little bit over the line when he was doing that far side cargo score during the sandstorm. And that's why I had to, remind him about, hey, you got to use the camera. I also helped him out by like, well, I mean, I'm an alumni. It doesn't matter now. I kind of looked toward like the big monitor or the big projection on the wall, and I was like, "Mike, you're good. You're good." And then he would do that. At this point, it's 40 to 26, 30 to 40 is doing an admirable job, both defending and counter defending at the same time. No one's scoring on their side. Meanwhile, like we've been like nonstop filling out the both the cargo and also the rocket as much as we could. We were very lucky to have partnered with someone that could, did we? I actually don't remember much. It feels like there's a fuel inside the nearest rocket. Yeah, maybe we had like a teammate that could put on panels. That's what they were called. They're called panels. Wait, were they? I actually don't know. At this point, it's 37:48, 50 seconds left on the clock. Looking at the I think they're actually, they're catching up definitely when it comes to the cargo, but we have them beat with the rocket for sure. And that was part of the thing. Even though we didn't have anyone that can like get up to the highest points, like the fact that we could just so reliably get, the lower level ones in, so consistently, that definitely, took the odds in our favor. And honestly, I think now that I'm watching it, the fact that we had someone that could set up those, that could get us as far as on the rockets as we did, it's actually really helpful. Oh, there's a climb. He's getting there. Yeah, he's in. Look at them. Oh, they're bouncing around. We were so hyped because this was so early in the season, and we just like kept on getting like the new. Oh, is this not a high score? We had like a high score earlier on in the match, but as you can see, look here, we have the sandstorm bonus, which was purely the result of all of us working together with either cameras or autonomous. We had more hatch panels. Thank you very much. I don't know if it was Team Ultimate or Team whoever else, but 27 cargo to 21 cargo. And then like, of course we tied on the hab climb. No one made a penalty, but like, as you can see, these roughly, I'm bad at math, but these roughly like even out. Oh no, the hatch panels for sure. But I'd say that both the hatch panels and the cargo, those made a huge difference at the end of the day. Did they unmute it ever? I'm sad.
These guys are giving. Now listen, you might be thinking, right? These guys are giving themselves a little bit too much credit. Oh, okay, so like you don't like doing the rocket because you're incapable of it, and that makes you a good person to pick. That makes you a good team to pick. Well, let's see what would happen if you had like 3 rocket-capable robots on the same team. Let's have that as like a thought experiment. Yeah, you would be able to change up things at will. If one robot was incapacitated, you could have the other 2, still get the rockets done. But if one robot's incapacitated or otherwise incapable of using its rocket lift, which you would need to, which you would use to use the cargo anyway, you're still one robot down no matter what. So really, you don't necessarily need, even at the highest level, 3 robots that can do everything. I recommend watching, in fact I'm going to have you watch, the Einstein match for that particular year. I'm really sorry if you're a 254 fan. I don't want you to have to relive this experience. You might want to turn away. But otherwise, look at what each team is doing, particularly the other team, and see how they're like, see what their team composition is, and see that maybe we weren't so wrong after all.
This one wasn't muted.
Space Explorers Between the Lines.
And I'm gonna need all of your help to count down, because this is gonna start in 3, 2, 1, go!
So I think the biggest thing to take a look at during this match particularly is like what every robot's doing after, autonomous. Because autonomous, of course, everyone's doing their thing. Perfectly even scores. They got it flow charted out. Everyone's doing good. After, I think, during teleop is when stuff starts to happen. We can already see, like, okay, they have. No, it's good. On both sides, you have a robot playing defense, and while that's happening, you have two other robots that are, working the cargo, working the rocket. And I feel like ultimately that third robot is you can really do whatever you want with it. I think the fact that these robots in particular, they do what they do so, well, so fast that I guess it doesn't make much of a difference whether they can also do the rocket or not. But it's an interesting thing to look at, that even at the highest level here, the fact that these guys can do rocket, it's not that important because, like, they aren't really doing that. They're just playing defense. Spinning around. But that's definitely one of the main points I'm trying to get across here, is that, like, you didn't need to be, like those top two teams that were doing it. You could easily just, like, be a very good defense bot, and, like, everything else will pretty much, come into place. And as long as you have a robot that drives well, and as long as you've programmed it to drive very well, consistently, not like failing or whatever, and if you got like a good autonomous and good driver controls if you need it, then you were set. And I really feel like our robot this year was, like, amazing. The fact that not only could we play defense if we wanted to, but we were also, like, such a fast cargo bot. Like, maybe not as fast as, like, these guys, but that's basically what I'm trying to get across. That's basically what I'm trying to get at.
2, 1. Newton showed up.
They came back.
I feel like the biggest takeaway from that match was that the third robot, as you can see, even on both sides, I think, once they were done doing their things, once they were done filling up the cargo, or even before then, they were going out for defense. They were going to, take it to the opponent. And that's not something that, that's actually something that anyone can do, really. And in fact, a robot that has, like, a low center of gravity like ours, or like any other robot that would be, like, seemingly very simple, very rudimentary, would actually do very well in a defense role. You would not only have, like, less weight on you, or you would have more weight on you because of the heavy arm thing, but you would be able to do, defense better. You have low center of gravity. You wouldn't tip over as much. Obviously, like, both teams probably would have benefited a lot from having the triple climb. So that would be one thing that, maybe you would have to invest in for sure. But aside from that, even at the highest level of play, you could really be a low, smallish robot that only does, like, cargo and whatnot, and you would probably still find some good success as long as you could drive your robot well enough to do some admirable defense. And if your opposing team happened to really, man, I feel bad for them. But I feel like that's genuinely, like, the most important thing to understand about being a veteran programmer. It's not always going to be about, like, doing this crazy, insane, like, ultimate mega computer level of programming. It's mostly just making sure that everything's concise. If you have something that you can do in order to make your driver's life easier, you would go to do it. You would make sure to talk to your engineers about, okay, how can this design be easier to program than this, or something like that. You would make sure to talk about, okay, well, here's how here's what I can do, here's what I can contribute, how would that improve our game plan, and then just making sure that everything just does its job. There isn't too much incredible more than that. All you have to do, I believe, is to just take a look at the game, take a look at your competition, and then make a call on what you want to do, like, what's your game plan, and then you would program around that. I feel like being able to do that, like that skill, like game sense and whatnot, I feel like that would be the biggest mark of a veteran programmer. And I know that this is actually a lot to digest. This is a lot to like look at, and I probably didn't explain it the best way possible. So I think that the best thing to do would be to maybe either show more videos or to actually leave the rest of this session up to a Q&A between me and my co-host. And for any of y'all in the chat that had any questions about like game sense or about like the metagame or how to be like the best programmer that you can be, or even if you had like any questions at all, I'd love to hear them. I think that's it for me. Hope you all enjoyed this video. Thank you all for watching. Stick around, we still got some time left. But yeah, see ya. I mean, I'm still here, but you know, me from past.
I get it. It's pretty funny. Oh, that's a shame. But hey, I guess it's good enough that we got the information out there. We got the content out there. I'd be more than happy to hear any comments or questions from you guys in the call. I'd be happy to do that.
Mike, do you have any questions for him, Mike?
Oh, he fell asleep. I feel bad.
He's still there. He's just on mute. But how much background did you have with Java programming before you got on the team?
Before I got on the team, I did like this thing back in middle school called like, I think it was like an hour of code or something like that. I was the only one that was excited to do it, but it was just like making a rectangle in like this very simple looking program thing. When I came into robotics my freshman year, I very much didn't understand anything. It wasn't until my sophomore year that I matured a little bit. I said, okay, I'm gonna try earnestly to like ask questions, have a proper sit down to learn this stuff. And honestly, sophomore year, I became the captain of 12285 because I like raised my hand when people asked, okay, who's leading 12285? And we had a newbie programmer joining that team with me. And we basically like learned it together, going through like the practice or the template questions or the template programs, and like trying to decode amongst ourselves what they mean. And that over the course of that time, I think that's when I definitely learned the most about the fundamentals of programming. After that, I take a C++ class. The first half was fun. The second half I didn't like at all. But I mean, I guess it helped me with some different aspects of programming that I could do if I wanted to get like really advanced.
So
but aside
you
from
prefer
that,
Java over C++, I guess, right?
yes. Although I can do more stuff with C++ because I actually I actually got properly taught how to use it. I don't know how to do any of that. The same stuff I did during that class on Java.
Okay, fair enough. Mike, do you have any questions?
Not really, but I think that I really think this is one of the best programming workshops I've seen that's really geared to the young or the beginning programmers. Your story is very similar to how programmers usually get assigned on teams. They have an interest, but maybe not a whole lot of background experience. And so they just kind of get thrown into it. And I think that's a good story to tell. And I like the way you told it. I don't really have any questions about that. I just think it's a great story and persevering and making things work.
Oh, thank you. I feel like that the way that I experience it, the way that I've experienced programming and robotics is kind of the way a huge number of other people have. And honestly, if I had to say one thing that I took away from FIRST the most, it was the idea that, you know, from all my outreach events I've been to, of all the competitions I've been at, of all the little elementary and middle schools where I've done these little, having the kids do the autonomous themselves, so many people, and myself included, thought it was cool, but didn't even know it was real, or didn't even think, oh no, it's too complicated for me. I can't handle this. And I feel like being able to demonstrate to them and have them participate in it, but by demonstrating that it's really not as hard as they make it out to be, then you get so much more interest and so much more involvement into it. I feel like when it comes to so many people that don't know much about robotics, or the people that need the outreach the most, I feel like that mindset has been the most successful for me at getting more people interested in FIRST. That's probably what I feel FIRST means to me.
Well, I really appreciate you guys doing this, and hope that you will do these things in the future. I think it's important. Um, One thing I want y'all to know, one of my efforts in doing doing this particular set of workshops, and I intentionally picked some teams who I had seen do quite well at events, but haven't necessarily had the chance to come and do a presentation at a workshop. Because I don't know if you guys have done anything like this before, but I wanted to hear from a team that we haven't heard a lot from. So, I mean, you've shown great things in events, but it's time for you to share, those things in a wider audience. So thank you for doing that. By the way, what college are you at? I know you're not, you're an alumni, correct?
Yes. One sec.
Sure.
I think he has to go get the college swag. Let's see here.
Oh, that's what oh, okay. I should have known. My wife is a UT grad, so.
So is a lot of people in my family.
Well, I went to Baylor, so we won't be cheering for the same football team if you're into that. But that's okay. I have a lot of friends who are Longhorns, and my wife's a pretty strong fan, and so anyway. But I wondered, and what are you majoring in? I'm just curious. Physics.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is from the standpoint of being now a FIRST alumni. This was great for you to come and do this. I know it wasn't easy, because college students don't have a whole lot of time on their hands to do extra stuff. And I'm very appreciative of that. I also want to remind you to look up at UT, and it's a big campus, so it may be hard to find. And if you want to text me or something, maybe I can link you up with. There should be a chapter, a FIRST alumni chapter at UT that is active in volunteering at events. They may also do mentoring, but I don't necessarily know that college students really have a lot of time to mentor unless they want to go and do it with their old team or something. But hook up with the FIRST alumni group there, because it's a great way to stay involved with FIRST.
And on that, Mike, you can let me throw a plug in there. It's firstintexas.org/alumni. You can go there and learn the University of Texas Alumni Association, or I think they call it Fanatics or something like that. But yeah, great group of FIRST alumni that are going to the University of Texas, and they like to come in and support events and help mentor and stuff. It's a great group.
So, by the way, if you don't know, and you may not know this story because it probably is a little bit older than you are, or at least older than you would remember from FIRST, but there was a group of UT grad students that started the FIRST robotics program at Anderson High School. You may know them more as the Tin Cans or the Austin Cans. There was a group there that really made that team start up. And they included, it was a pretty notable alumni group that was involved with that. Two of those folks that you may recognize, or you should. One is Jess Jankowicz, who's now the program director for FIRST in Texas. The other is Andy Lynch, who has the team, the Disco Bots in Houston. So they had a pretty awesome group that started that, and there's a lot of other active people from that UT organization that would be well worth networking with. I mean, it's a network that would benefit you greatly. So
got it. I'll make sure to check it out. Thank you.
All right, guys. Well, that was a great session. Thank you for the 2-part session. We'll close out now, and we will be back at 3 o'clock for prototyping with Team Spectrum. Thank you.
This concludes this session. If you're watching us live, please take the time to go back to YouTube and pick up our next session, or you can always visit our live page at firstrgv.me/live and pick up the next session there. We appreciate you watching and participating in today's session.